Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. In today's video we are going to be talking about the best 20 players in Smash Ultimate for the second half of the year. The season extended from July 20th all the way to December 15th. So basically the first major of the season was Kagura 12 with Kulon, and the last major of the season was Sumabato SB53. And I got a couple of honorable mentions I just want to throw out right here, and that's going to be Zachary, Onin, and Shining Mark. I think all these players would have been in the top 20 if they just attended more events. And I know Onin and Shining Mark are still being ranked. They're going to be somewhere probably in that 20 to 40 range. But I think if they went to more stuff, they would have gotten into that top 20 because they are that good. Just their opportunities really didn't allow them to do so. And let's get right into it. So let's get right into it, starting off with our 20th best player in the world, and that is going to be Syrup. And it was really only a matter of time before this guy kind of got back to the super top level echelon, because he was pretty close a couple of years back with Ness, ended up not dropping the character, but putting him to the side as a secondary for Steve, who was like infinitely better. And there's definitely a learning curve with him, but it has finally been met, and the results are definitely matching that. Syrup's best result of the season, I would definitely say, is his run at Riptide, where he gets 5th place with wins over Lima, Mia, and Tweak, only losing to Spargo and Sonics. But he also gets a win at the Coinbox IRL, where he gets wins over Lima, Wrath, Shootone, Shiny Mark, and Shootone again, only dropping shots to Shiny Mark and Shootone respectively. So Syrup's had some really strong results this season, and his worst result is a 25th at Supernova, where he ends up losing to Spargo and Light, which, like, you can't feel too bad about that one. And he also gets a nice win on Siski. Syrup is so unbelievably good at this game. He even got 9th place at Luminosity Makes Moves Miami, which was a Steve banned event, just going solo Ness. He is one of the best players in the world, and also one of the most underrated players in the world because he plays Steve. But you guys have to get the fog out of your eyes here. This kid is incredible, and the fact that he can beat you with both the Ness and the Steve is very telling of that. In 19th place, you're going to have Yoshidora, and Yoshidora's season is highlighted by high-impact wins. And you'll know what I mean when we get into it. Starting off with the 7th place at Supernova, which may have been his best run of the season. He ends up getting wins on Tilde, Geist, and Akola, as well as Onin, only losing to Shattuck and Osimo. Unfortunately for him, he does not keep that momentum into Umabora, though, where he ends up getting 33rd, losing to Suna and Tamapi, though he does pick up a win on Ryuo. He's got a 5th place at Sumabato SB51 with wins over Hurt and Jogabu, only losing to Osimo and Akola. 4th place at Sumabato SB52 with losses to Masa, I should say, and Osimo, getting wins on Rocky, Umeki, and Nyan. He's also going to have a 3rd place at Altcore with another win over Akola and Ryuo, only losing to Reru and Doramigi. And then finally, he's got a 4th place at Obaitori, where he ends up losing to 33 pair and box twice, but he gets a nice win over Raki. So you've got a lot of mid-level wins for Yoshidora. I'm talking within that, like, kind of 40 to 100 range, but when it comes to the super high level wins, he only has 3 of them, but 2 of them are over Akola, to be fair, and it really just feels like Yoshidora just didn't have too many opportunities to play some of these top 20 players. When he did, he was pretty successful, usually coming out on top, I guess, against Osimo. That was the one guy that seemed to have his number, but his only sub 50 loss is going to be to Suna. Everything else looks really good. He's had an incredible season, and he honestly just didn't have that many opportunities to play the best of the best, and I think that's the thing that hindered him the most. In 19th place, you're going to have Shattuck, and unfortunately for Shattuck, he just had a steady decline throughout the season, but he started off incredibly strong with a 3rd place at Supernova, beating Crepsole, Peanut, Yoshidora, and Reru, only losing to Spargo Sonics, and a 7th place at Riptide, beating Onin and Light, only losing to Beast Mode Paul and Sonics. But then he gets a 13th place at the Luminosity Invitational. He gets a win over to Buzz, and his worst loss there is to Mars, also losing to Osimo and Meister, who also did very good this season, so not terrible, but not super great. Gets a nice Lima win at Cirque, but loses to Light and Spargo. Then he gets a 9th at Luminosity Makes Moves Miami, gets a win over Syrup, but loses to Tweak and Meister, and it's the Throne 2, which really, really hurts Shattuck's season. He ends up going 0-5 there, losing to Cola, Hurt, Riddles, Drivey, and Chunky Kong as well. So he's going to take a couple losses there that are sub top 50. I don't even think Chunky Kong was in the top 100. So definitely a rough tournament there for Shattuck. And then after that, he ends up getting a 5th place at LACS Rivals with a nice win over Luis, but loses to Mia and Spargo. So for a majority of Shattuck's events, he lost to just, like, the best of the best, but he still picked up a solid win, like a win over Lima, a win over Syrup, a win over DeBuzz. But it really is just that one event, the Throne 2, that knocks him down like 3 or 4 positions on this ranking. And I know Shattuck said he was focusing more on school, which was almost certainly the reason that he started to have a little bit of a drop off towards the end of the season. As school starts off, he conveniently doesn't start doing as well. So if you're a Shattuck fan, I wouldn't be too worried about him. I'm sure he is going to be able to make a resurgence. It's just going to be a time investment for him. And it's not like he had a terrible season. He still got third place at the biggest event of the year. He just couldn't close it out as strong as he started it. In 17th place, you're going to have Lima, and the season doesn't start off the strongest for him. He's got a 25th at Supernova, getting upset pretty early on by PK Chris. Does pick up a win on Luis and has a decent losers run, but ends up losing to DeBuzz. Then he gets a 13th at Riptide, losing to Syrup and Riddles, but he does get a nice win over Onin as well as Skeleton and Geist. But then we get to the Invitational, and this is when Lima decides to become like one of the best players to ever touch a controller, because he gets wins over Doramigi, Mia, Zomba, T, and T again, only losing to Luis and then Light twice. And immediately after that, he goes and gets second at Cirque to CFL 4, losing to Shattuck in the winner side, but then beating Cola, Peanut, T, Spargo, Light, and Mia before losing to Mia in the reset. So 2 incredible tournaments in a row for Lima, pretty much just making up his season by themselves. But then after that, he goes on and gets top 8 at Luminosity, makes moves Miami with wins over Meister and Syrup, only losing to Sonics and Light. And he ends off the season at Coinbox IRL with a 9th place, losing to Syrup, Shiny Mark, and TM7 Zap. So you did have a couple lower losses from Lima this season to PK Chris, most notably, who I don't think was ranked in the top 100, and then TM7 Zap outside of the top 50, but also the quality of wins that Lima was able to get this season were unbelievable. He beat some of the best players that this game had to offer. And I've said it before, I'll say it again, I think that Lima plays the correct style of Bayonetta, using that whip punch, making your opponents make mistakes. Nobody does it better than him, and he got so much value from it this season. Really, really excited to see what he continues to do. Next up is going to be Meister, and his season was defined by his Japan trip, which was both hit and miss. He ends up getting a hit at the start with a 4th place at Sumovato SP50, beating Goryoka, Rocky, Task, and Navy, only losing to Dormigi twice. But then he gets a 17th place at Delta 8.5, losing to Yuzu and Mao. And I think Yuzu was just ranked outside of that top 100 as well, so that is going to be his only sub 100 loss. He's going to get a 3rd place at Japan 24, which is probably his best event of the season, beating Rocky, Kuroponzu, Miku, and Ryuo in the group phase. Does end up losing to Reru and Mia, and then he ends a pretty decent losers run, beating Rocky, Rarakusu, Snow, and Osimo before losing to Reru. He's going to get a 25th at Umabora SP11, losing to Chicken and Tama P. So the losses there aren't as bad. And then he gets a 4th place at Sumobato SB51, beating Alice, loses to Akola, but then beats Rarakusu, Luminous, Hurt, Reru, and Fui before losing to Akola again. Returns from Japan to NA with a pretty good start, honestly, getting a 9th place at the Luminosity Invitational, beating Osimo, Shattuck, and DeBuzz, only losing to Shutone and Spargo. And then finally, he's got a 5th place at Luminosity Makes Moves Miami, only losing to Lima and Leo, and still picking up wins on Shattuck and Riddle. So Meister's got a lot of really solid wins throughout this season. He took a couple bad losses throughout it, but really it was just that run at Delta 8.5 that kind of hurt him. Outside of that, all of his losses are either top 50 or really close to the top 50. I think Chicken was like the 51st ranked player. So Meister had a really incredible season. I think the thing that hurt him the most was the fact that he didn't perform at the P-tier events, missing 2 of the big P-tier events, and then the other one that he ends up going to, Umabora, he doesn't do super well. So if Meister is able to turn up at the P-tier events next season, I could honestly see him breaking it into the top 10. Next up is going to be Cola in 15th place, and his season is defined by one event, and we'll talk about that at the end. But he's starting off, he's got a 17th place at Supernova, doesn't pick up any high impact wins there, but only loses to Reru and On. He's got a 25th at Riptide with a nice win over Deathspade, only loses to Beast Mode Paul and Hurt. He's got a 7th place at the Invitational with wins over Snow, Epic Gabriel, and Doramigi, only losing to Spargo, Light, and Luis. He's got a 9th place at Cirque with a win over Beast Mode Paul, only losing to Tweak and Lima. 25th at Luminosity Makes Moves Miami, losing to Skeleton and Riddles. And then finally, he's got a 9th place at the Throne with a win over Candle and Shattuck, but losses to Rimu, Tweak, Mudace, and Zachary. So no sub 100 losses for Cola. He's doing pretty good in that regard. And obviously, this doesn't look like a top 20 season from what I've told you, but that's because I have withheld the crown jewel. And that is the Luminosity Invitational, of course. He ends up dropping sets to Sonics and Spargo, but he also beats Shiny Mark and Light and MK Leo, and Osimo, and Shutone, and Spargo as well. This is one of the best runs of the entire season. Maybe even the best run of the entire season. It's kind of tough to say because it isn't an invitational. It's kind of different with open brackets, but still, the quantity and the quality of wins that he got here were genuinely unbelievable and it absolutely made his season, as well as solid placements at Cirque and Invitational as well. It's not like he was a one-trick pony here, but I would be lying if I didn't say that this event had like a ton of impact. So shouts to Cola for winning the Luminosity Invitational and having a solid season throughout, but if he's able to replicate that event at other tournaments, it's gonna be real scary for everyone else. In 14th place, you're going to have Gluttony, and he was definitely the player that stuck up on me the most this season. I did not expect him to be performing this well, but he honestly just did super well whenever he showed up to events. He starts off with a win at Regen 2024, beating Miraz, Krebs LA, and he gets 2 wins over MK Leo. He's going to get a 3rd place at UFA, only losing to Siski, but still picking up wins on Spectral, Modzai, MK Big Boss, Stater U, and Lugi. He's got a 9th place at the Luminosity Invitational with wins over Tweak, Mars, and Buzz, only losing to Shootone and Leo. He does get a 25th at Delta 9, which is definitely his weakest performance, but he only loses to Sin and Rarer, so doesn't really take any bad losses there. And then his strongest event of the season is going to be at LACS Rivals. I know he won a major, and this was only a B+ tier, but he beat Light, Spargo, Light again, and Mia, only losing to Mia twice. The wins that he got there are just so high impact, beating a majority of the, spoilers, top 5. So Gluttony honestly had an incredible season. He just really didn't go to any events, and if he went to more, I'm very confident that he would have been ranked higher. His only, he doesn't have any sub 50 losses actually. His only bad losses, I say in air brackets, are going to be to Sin and Siski, both sitting in that 40 area. So Gluttony, no bad losses, really high impact wins. The only thing that stopped him was attendance. In 13th place, you have Snow, and Snow is one of the hardest players for me to rank just because he went to so much stuff. Like, it's actually insane how much this guy grinded. He gets a 13th place at Kagurimi 12 with wins on Chicken, Now, and Akio, only loses to Mia and Ryuo. He's got a 9th place at Supernova with wins on Gak and Sonics, most notably, only losing to Reru and Osimo. He's got a 4th place at Ultimate 22 Meisuma. I said that wrong, but you know what I'm talking about. He gets wins on Nyan, 33 Parent Box, and Kananabe, only losing to Hurt and Navy. He's got a 13th place at Sumabato SB50 with wins on Kome, only losing to Navy and Rocky. 5th place at Japan 24 with wins on Shupi, Masa, Rocky, Osimo, and Doromigi, only losing to MZK, Reru, and Meister. He's got a 9th place at Riptide, only losing to Tweak and Sonics, but picking up wins on Hurt and Luis. 3rd place at Ubora SP11, which I would say is his best event of the season, beating Matsunabe, Shuton, Reru, and Akola, only losing to Mia and Akola in the run back. He's got a 9th place at Sumabato SP51 with wins over Yonpi and Toraguri, only losing to Osimo and Reru. He's got a 13th place at the Invitational, losing to Cola, Spargo, and Puna, but he gets a win on Epic Gabriel. 17th place at Cirque, losing to Osh9 and Goblin, getting a win on Kananabe. 9th place at Delta 9, losing to Toraguri and Matsunabe, getting a win on Uame and Gachapi. 7th place at Don't Park on the Grass, losing to Shutone and Ken, getting wins on Tarek and MK Big Boss. 9th place at Ulcor the 4th, losing to Reru and Dorami, getting wins on Toraguri. And then finally, he's got a 13th place at Sumabato SB53 with losses to Shion and Rarakusu, but a win on Shiryuki. So, as you can see, Snow played a lot, and I mean a lot, of Smash Ultimate this season, and with that came a very wide range of results. He has some bad results with some lower losses, but he also has some of the best wins that you could possibly get with 3rd place at a super major event. And I think the average of Snow is somewhere around this 13th place, but I'm really curious where y'all would rank him, because as I said, I do think that he is the hardest player to rank just because the sheer quantity and also the variety of how he does at all of his events. Next up is going to be Hurt, and I think if I had to describe Hurt's season, I would just say that it was very inconsistent, which is something that he hasn't been plagued by before, but he's got a 25th at Kagadivi 12 with a win on Rimu, losing to Alice and Leah. He's got a 5th then at Supernova with wins on Tweak, Zomba, and DeBuzz, losing to Spargo and Osimo. 2nd place at Maisuma Ultimate 22, being Rarakusu, Snow, Navy, and Doromigi, losing to Doromigi twice. 3rd place, Sumabato SP50, wins on Navy and Karage, losing to Reru and Doromigi. He's got a 17th place at Riptide with a win on Cola, but still loses to Candle and Snow. 5th place then at Umabora SP11 with wins on MK Leo and Taike, as well as Ellie Go, only losing to Mia and Zachary. 9th place at Zumabato SB51 with a win on Suna and Masa, only losing to Yoshidora and Meister. 7th place at the Invitational with wins on Peepnut, Epic Gabriel, and Zomba, only losing to T, Light, and Mia. Then he gets 17th, though, at Sork, losing to Peepnut and Dominator. 4th place at the Throne 2, beating Riddles, Chunky Kong, Shattuck, Budace, and Tweak, losing to Light and Spargo. And finally, a 5th place at Alt Core, where he ends up getting wins on Tama P and 33 Parent Box, only losing to Reru and Akola. So, as you can see, her season was kind of all over the place, but for the most part, even in tournaments where he wasn't performing super well, his losses weren't that bad. His only sub 50 losses, I think, are going to be to Snow and Dominator, but everyone else is going to be in that. Leah as well at the start of the season, actually, but everyone else is going to be within that top 50, and he gets a bunch of really strong wins throughout the season, and it was just those inconsistencies that kept him out of the top 10. Do I think those inconsistencies are going to continue? No, I really don't, especially considering that he started off the next year with a win at Smash Awesome. It seems like he's going to put that in the past behind him and just start consistently getting into those top 8s again, and if Hurt can do that, he'll get back to that top 5 status pretty quick. And in 11th place, just shy of the top 10, you're going to have Shootone. And if you were to just take a glance at Shootone's results, you may be surprised to not see him in the top 10, considering that they are very good. But it was the wins that ultimately stopped Shootone from being in that top 10. And as we go through his results, you'll understand more and more. He starts off in a 9th place at Kagadibi 12 with Kulon, getting wins over Sigma, Jogabu, and Taike, only losing to Sin and Zachary. He's got a 17th place at Supernova, only losing to Reru and Mia, picking up a nice win on Wrath. And he ends up winning Delta 8.5 with 2 wins over Ken, most notably. He's got a 2nd place at Riptide as well, where he ends up double eliminating Sonics, as well as beating Zomba and Beast Mode Paul, only losing to Spargo twice. Then he gets a 9th place at Umabura with a win over Taike, Shiryuki, and Goryoka, only losing to Snow and Doranbigi. 3rd place at the Luminosity Invitational with wins over Mars, Gluttony, Meister, and Zomba, only losing to Tweak, Cola, and Spargo. He ends up winning Sirius, which is a B+ tier, gets 2 wins over Ken. 2nd place, or 4th place, I should say, at Delta 9, ends up getting wins over Toriguri and Matsunabe, only losing to Tamapi and Rare. He's got a 5th place at Don't Park on the grass, only losing to Spargo and Luis, but still picking up a nice win on Snow. And then finally, for the Coin Box IRL, he's going to get wins on Esam, Oolong, Onin, Zap, Sonics again, Onin again, Shiny Mark, Syrup, and he ultimately loses to Syrup in the reset, as well as in the winner's semifinals, so drops 2 sets to him there. But for Shootone, all of his results are really solid. His only real inconsistent placement is going to be that 17th at Supernova, and that is the most important event of the year, so it definitely matters. But also, he lost to Reru and Mia. It's not like he takes any bad losses, and he doesn't take any bad losses throughout this season. This is going to be a season where his worst loss, I believe, is to Tama P, so he looks really solid in that aspect. So what is the thing that is keeping Shootone out of the top 10? And it's just going to be the fact that he doesn't have enough high quality wins. If we look at people that he's actually beaten in the top 10, he's beaten Sonics 3 times, which is kind of crazy that he's beaten Sonics 3 times, but that's it. That is the only player who's even in consideration for top 10 that he has managed to take a set off of in this second half of the year, and that is going to be the reason why Shootone rather, is not in the top 10. And I'm not saying he didn't beat anyone good aside from Sonics. You know, he got a win over Snow, which maybe people would consider top 10. He got a handful of wins over Ken, who did really good. He got a win over Gluttony and Meister. Shootone still had a good season, but relative to the people in the top 10, his high echelon wins just weren't there. And we have arrived at the top 10. If you've made it this far, you're clearly enjoying, so be sure to sub. It would mean a lot to me. And our first player in this top 10 is going to be MK Leo. He starts off the season with a win at Warehouse War for double eliminating Zomba, as well as beating Jaws. He gets a 17 at Supernova, which is his worst placement of the season, but he only loses to Osimo and Nicolo, so actually doesn't take any bad losses there. Double eliminated by Gluttony at Region, where he ends up getting 2nd place, beating Dryby, Lugi, Space, and MK Big Boss. He wins Fist Bump International over Omatsu and MK Big Boss. Gets a 5th place at Umabura SP11, beating Karage, Alice, Akio, and Doramigi, only losing to Hurt and Akola. He's got a 5th place at the Luminosity Invitational with wins over Spargo, TM7 Zap, Gluttony, and Shiny Mark, only losing to Zomba twice and Cola. He's got a win at Reset the Bracket, which is just a Mexican B tier, but he does win it flawlessly. Wanted to point that out. He's got a 4th place at Luminosity Makes Moves Miami with wins over Light and Meister, only losing to Sonics and Light. He's got a 3rd place at the Throne 2, beating Mudace, Tilde, Dryby, Zachary, and Spargo once again, only losing to Light twice and then losing to Spargo in the run back. He's got a 1st place at Warlock Secret Village, which normally I wouldn't bring up, but he ends up getting 2 Spargo wins at that event, so I would definitely say it is substantial. He also loses to Gilhue at that event, though he does get his revenge in the losers final. So aside from that loss to Gilhue at a C tier, MK Leo has like no bad losses. He's only losing to people that are in the top 20 or people that are pretty close to the top 20, like Zomba. An amazing recovery from Leo, just considering that he had a really weak start to the year, but he just bounced back, looked amazing literally the entire season. Aside from Supernova, he top 8'd every single event that he went to, and I honestly only think that he's going to get better. In ninth place, you're going to have Tweak. And Tweak's season was basically just a lot of okay events from him, but at every single one of them, he got a really impactful win, and sprinkled in there, he had a couple insane tournaments. It starts off with a ninth place at Supernova, where he gets a very nice win over Osimo before losing to Hurt and Sonics. He's got a ninth place at Riptide, where he gets a very nice win over Snow before losing to Syrup and Zombie. He's got a ninth place at the Luminosity Invitational with very nice wins over Mars and Shutone, then losing to Gluttony, Osimo, and Shannon. You could probably figure out the trend that is going on here. Though he does break it at the Invitational, getting wins on Kananabe, Zombo, Luis, and Amiya for fourth place, only losing to Beast Mode Paul, Light, and T. But we're back to the trend at Circle, where he ends up getting seventh place with a very nice win over Cola, only losing to Mia and Spargo. And then we get our big major win of Luminosity Makes Moves Miami, where he ends up beating Jazzo, Shattuck, Wrath, and double eliminates Sonics from the bracket, though he does drop one set to him. But I mean, two is better than one. What can I say? He's got a fifth place at the Throne 2, beating Rimu, Candle, Cola, Tilde, and Zachary, only losing Spargo and Hurt. And then finally at LACS Rivals, he gets a nice win over Luis, but then loses to Mia and Light for fifth place. So this season from Tweak, he basically just loses to the best of the best. Aside from that one loss to Beast Mode Paul and also a loss to Shiny Mark, every player that beat him is in the top 20 this season. And Shiny Mark and Beast Mode Paul are both going to be in the top 30 as well. So he's only losing to the best of the best. Every single event that Tweak went to, he got at least one high impact win, sometimes multiple of them. And he just looked amazing. The only thing that was holding Tweak back is the fact that he just got a handful of ninth places in a row. If even those were fifth or fourth places, he could have been in the top 5 this season. Absolutely. Next up is going to be Osimo in 8th place, and this is a player that I always felt like was on the brink of greatness. He was just missing one or two things to really take it to that next level, and he found them this season. Just looked incredible. He's got a 7th place to start off at KagaDB 12 with Kulon, beating Goryoka, Now, and Sin, only losing to Zachary and Spargo. 4th place at Supernova, beating MK Leo, ends up losing to Tweak, but then beats Geist, Zomba, Snow, Yoshidora, and Hurt before losing to Sonics. He's got a 13th place at Sumobato SB50, where he ends up losing to Sumo Suto and Taz. He's got a 4th place at Japan 24, beating MZK, Rocky, Masa, Rarekusu, and Doramigi, only losing to Shupi, Snow, Mia, and Meister. He's got a 9th place at Riptide, beating Light, only losing to Spargo and Riddles. 25th at Umabora SP11, losing to Alice and Shirayuki. But then he has his first major win at Sumobato SP50, won an S tier as well. And it was no easy feat. He beats Rarekusu, Kome, Snow, Yoshidora, Aka, and Akola in a game 5 to win his first ever major. After that, he's got a 5th place at Luminosity Invitational, loses to Meister and Cola as well as Spargo, but beats to Buzz, Shattuck, and Tweak. He wins a B+ tier in Landmark 4, beating Rarekusu twice, as well as Alice. 2nd place at Sumobato SP52 after losing to Masa. Has a crazy losers run, beating Shion, Kome, Ken, Yonpi, Masa, Yoshidora, Reru, and then loses to Okola. And he ends off the season with a weaker 17th place at Altcore, losing to Alice and Navy. So Osimo does have more bad losses than a majority of people that are going to be in this top 10. But he also just has so many events attended, and the majority of them, he is just doing extremely well, getting a ton of high impact wins. He wins his first major as well in that S tier at Sumibato SB51. And genuinely, I only think Osimo is going to improve from here, which is kind of scary because he's already a top 10 player. Like, how much higher can you go? In 7th place, you're going to have Doramigi. And I just want to say, I think Doramigi and Osimo are really close to each other on the rankings, like almost interchangeable. And Doramigi was one of those players that the first time I laid eyes on him, it was just like, okay, he is going to be one of the best players in the world. I just don't know when that's going to happen. And, I mean, it happened a while ago. It happened at the start of the year, but it really happened this season. He starts off with a 5th place at Kowloon 12 with Kagaribi beating Spargo and Aka, only losing to Akola and Spargo in the run back. He wins Meisuma Ultimate 22, even though it's just a B+ tier. He beats Navy and double eliminates Hurt from the bracket, only losing to Hurt once. He's got a 2nd place at Sumobato SP50 with a win on Meister, loses to Reru, beats Karage, beats Meister again, beats Hurt, and then he ends up getting another win, or beats Reru actually in that first set of grand finals, but ultimately loses the run back. He's got a 5th place at Japan 24, where he does lose to Kuhaku and Shiryuki, as well as Snow and Osimo, but he picks up some decent wins on players like Shiryuki, Rarikusu, and Kome. He's got a 7th place at Umamura SP11 with wins on Kome and Shuton, as well as Akio, only losing to Miya and Leo. He's got a 33rd at Sumabato SV51, which is going to be his only bad placement of the year, losing to Fui and Marudana, I believe that's how you say that. It's the really good Donkey Kong player from Japan. So that's going to be his bad placement of the season. Not great there. He's got a 9th place at the Invitational after that with a win on Beastmo Paul, losing to Cola, Mia, Luis, and Lima, which also isn't amazing, but at least none of those are bad losses. He's got a 9th at Cirque, losing to Light, and Spargo getting a win on Epic Gabriel, and Dominator 2nd place at Altcore with a really nice losers run after losing to Ryuo. He beats 33 parent blocks, Navy, Snow, Tamapi, Ryuo, Akola, Yoshidoro, resets the bracket versus Rare, but ultimately loses the reset, and he ends the season with a 3rd place at Sumabato SV53. Gets a win over Suda, but loses to Raki and Taike. So aside from that one slip up at Sumabato SB51 and a couple bad losses at the Invitational, specifically Japan 24, you only have Dormigi losing to the best of the best, and he's got some really strong records against some of the best that this game has to offer. Hurt specifically, Hurt was such a thorn in Dormigi's side throughout his competitive career, despite that matchup being really bad for Snake, but he took some time this season and he figured it out. He was a lot more successful, and generally Dormigi was just a lot more successful in his bad matchups. Not all of them. He wasn't able to crack Mia this season, but he gets a really nice win over Akola. He beats Meister a couple times, which I know isn't Mia, but I think that matchup is tough for Min. Everything for Dormigi is heading in the right direction. He's looking like one of the best players in the world right now, and I think that's only going to stay that way. Really quickly, I should mention for Dormigi that he actually doesn't have a bad record versus Akola. He'd only played him once before, so now he's even against Akola. And he also started to do better against Raru, even though Raru was still winning overall. You did have Dormigi start taking some sets in return, which is definitely a good sign from him. And speaking of the devil, Raru is going to be your 6th best player in the world with Solo Luigi. It's crazy. I know. He's got a 25th at the start of the season, not great at Kalu 12 with Kagurabi losing to Tora and Ryuo, but then he's got a 5th place at Supernova, beating Shuton, Snow, Apollo Kage, and Cola, only losing to Shattuck and Sonics. He then goes on to get a major win with Solo Luigi, beating Dormigi twice, as well as Hurt, only dropping 1 set to Dormigi. He gets a win over Masa as well. He's got a 2nd place at Japan 24 with wins over Snow, Yonpi, Meister, Ryuo, Meister again, as well as Mia, though he does ultimately lose to Mia twice. He's got a 9th place at Umabura SP11, beating Masa and Kananabe, only losing to Snow and Aki. He's got a 7th place at Sumabato SP51 with wins over Ron, Suda, Snow, and 33 parent blocks, only losing to Ryuo and Meister. He wins Obai Tori, which is a B+ here, but he wins it over Navy, Snow, Yonpi, and Goryoka. He's got a 3rd place at Landmark 4, which again is a B+ tier, but he gets wins on Raki and Alice, only loses to Rarikusu. 3rd place at Sumabato SP52 with wins over Masa, Umbeki, and Alice, only loses to Akola and Osimo. 2nd place at Delta 9, loses to Ocha pretty early on, but then he beats Leah, Passeriman, Kabanga, Glutani, awesome win on Glutani by the way, Ike, Fui, Illuminato, Yamanakshin, Tamapi, Shuton, and Ryopai before losing to Mia. And finally, actually not finally, he's a couple more here. He's got a 5th place at Dope Park on the grass with the wins over Ouch and JDB, losing to Mia and Kin. A win at Altcore the 4th with wins over Yoshidora, Dormigi, Hurt, Snow, and Shiryuki, though he does lose to Dormigi in that first set of grand finals. The 17th place at Sumabato SV53, losing to Taike and Rarikusu, gets a win on Task. And then actually, finally, he's got a 1st place at Obai Tori 1 with 2 wins over Rarikusu, drops 1 set to Rarikusu, and then wins over Rocky and Masa as well. So, give me a second to catch my breath here because that was a laundry list of tournaments. But as you can see, Raru is very consistent despite being solo Luigi, and he has made me believe that Luigi is better than Kazuya. Now, that is in combination with me also thinking that Kazuya is just bad, but the stuff that Raru is doing with this character is genuinely unbelievable. His touch of death is so strong. His recovery aspect is also way better than I ever would have expected, and the consistency that he has with one of the most inconsistent characters in the game is so impressive to me. I don't know if he's going to be able to maintain it going into 2025, just considering that he's had a pretty rough start already, getting 13th place at 2 A-tier events, but honestly, he doesn't need to. The fact that this has ever been accomplished with Luigi getting a top 10 in the current state of the game, it is unbelievable. Huge shout out to Raru. He is one of the most impressive players I have ever seen in Smash. In fifth place, you are going to have Light, and Light was just really consistent this season. And it might not seem like that because he does start off with a 17th at Supernova, but he only loses to Ken and Sonic, so it doesn't take any bad losses there. Gets a Syrup win as well. Then you've got a similar situation with a 9th place at Riptide where he loses to Osimo and Shattuck, so no bad losses, and also picks up wins on Mia and Peanut, which is very nice. And after that, it's just top 8s for Light. 7th place at Luminosity Invitational, beating Shiny Mark, Sonics, and Mars, only losing to Cola, Zomba, and Spargo. First place at Wavelength, which is just a B+ here, but he beats Just Blue, Zomba, and Mars. And then he also gets first place at Invitational, which is an A+ here, beating Peanut, T, Hurt, Cola, Tweak, and double eliminating Lima. He's got a 3rd place at Cirque, beating Dormiggy, Peanut, and Shattuck, only losing to Mia and Lima. 3rd place at Luminosity Makes Moves Miami, beating Luis, then losing to Leo, but then beating Mia, Lima, Wrath, and MK Leo in the run back before losing to Sonic. 2nd place at the Throne 2, beating Tilde, Budace, MK Leo, Riddles, Hurt, and MK Leo. Once again, double eliminated by Spargo. And then finally, he's got LSCS Rivals, where he is double eliminated by Glutzy, but he beats Mars, Tweak, and Spargo. So Light has beaten pretty much every single top 20 player that he has played this season, if he's played them more than once, and he does not have any bad losses, which is not something you can say about most people. Most people usually have something that's like at least sub top 50, but Light doesn't have any losses that are sub top 30, and that is the thing that is going to be rewarding him a ton this season. He was just so consistent overall, almost always getting into these top 8s, and usually when he got into the top 8, he was going pretty far, at least getting himself a podium finish of 3rd place. So Light is going to be your best player in America for the second half of 2024, and he should feel really good about that. In 4th place, you are going to have Sonics, and unfortunately for him, the curse was not broken this year. It still holds strong. He wasn't able to get that dub, but 2025 for sure going to be the year that he breaks it. And I say this year was cursed. He's still the 4th best player in the world. He got a 2nd place at Supernova with a win over Jazzo before losing to Snow. Then he beats Light, Mia, Tweak, Akola, Reru, Osimo, and Shattuck before losing to Spargo. I think Sonic's run at Supernova is the most impressive run of the year. I'm aware they didn't win the event, but he beats half of the top 10, and that's not even exaggeration. He beats more than half of the top 10 in the losers bracket. Like, actually insanity. After that, he's got a 3rd place at Riptide. The curse finally broken. Beats Riddles, then loses to Shootone. Beats Snow, Shattuck, Syrup, and Riddles once again, but loses to Shootone. So double eliminated there for 3rd place. And after that, he ends up getting a 13th place at the Luminosity Invitational, which definitely isn't great. Gets a win on Cola and only loses to Light, Shiny Mark, and Spargo. So he doesn't take any bad losses, but any loss for a player like Sonic is definitely just going to hurt on his resume. He's got a 2nd place at Luminosity Makes Moves Miami, where he gets wins over Mudace, Lima, and MK Leo before losing to Tweak, but then he beats Light as well as Tweak in the run back, but Tweak resets him in the grand finals. And his final event of the year, Coinbox IRL, he ends up getting 5th place with wins over TM7 Zap, Crepsale, Yeast, Brujo, and Jazzo, only losing to Onin and Shootone. So Sonic's has a perfect season, like literally a perfect season, aside from that slight slip up at the Luminosity Invitational where he only loses to top 30 players in the world. He's getting podium finishes at every single event that he's going to. I guess Coinbox IRL is a slight slip up, but that's only a B+ here. He has a 2nd place at an S tier, a 3rd place at a P tier, and a 2nd place at a P tier. Sonics just didn't win anything. That was the main issue that he had this season. Honestly, the only real complaint I could give to him is that he just didn't win anything. Maybe if he attended a couple more events as well, I could see him, even without winning anything, stealing that 3rd spot from Akola. But yeah, Sonics had an amazing season. He just didn't win. It sucks. In 3rd place, you were going to have Akola, and he was finally dethroned this season. No longer your best player in the world, but obviously he is still in contention for that title. And Akola went to a lot more stuff this season than I think people actually realize. He ended up going to 6 major events, starting off with Kowloon 12 with Kagura, where he ends up getting 2nd place, beating Gak, Tsubaki, Zachary, and Dormiggy before losing to Mia, where he then beats Spargo for the first time in recent memory, as well as Mia in the run back, though he does lose the reset. Then he's got his worst placement of the season by far with a 7th place at Supernova, beating Beastly and Jackal before losing to Yoshidora, where then he beats MK Leo, DeBuzz, and Mars before falling to Sonics. He's got a 2nd place at Umabora SP11, beating Carmelo, Chicken, and Rocky before losing to Snow, where then he beats MK Leo, Zachary, and Snow in the run back, as well as Mia in grand finals with his Aegis before losing the reset. He's got a 2nd place at Sumabato SP51, beating Shupi and Meister before falling to Aka. Then beats Jogabu, Ryuo, Yoshidora at Meister, and Aka in the run back before falling to Osimo. He gets a win at Sumabato SP51 with wins over Kept, Jogabu, Yonpi, Rocky, Reru, and Osimo. And finally, he's got a 4th place at alt core with wins over Rarikusu and Nayano, only losing to Yoshidora and Dorami. He also gets wins on Jogabu, Alice, and Hurt. So Akola, very consistent season, does not miss out on a single top 8, and his only kind of bad loss is going to be to Aka, and I say bad loss, that's still a player that is going to be in the top 30. So pretty much just a perfect season from Makola, like he's had for the past 2 years at this point. And it really was just attendance that I think stopped Makola from being the best player in the world. And again, he went to more stuff than people are giving him credit for, but if he went to like 3 or 4 more events, I absolutely think he could have secured that #1 spot, because he probably would have done good at all of those events. Now, would he necessarily have been the best in the world if he went to more? I don't know if he would have been in the season, just because I think our current best in the world did really, really good. But I think the thing that stopped Makola wasn't his skill level, it's just that he didn't show up to enough stuff, and that's why he's not the best. And I should say, there was a lot of people this season that got their first win over Akola, and I think that this is going to continue as a trend, just as people adapt more and more. Not only are they getting better against Steve, but they're getting better against him as a player. But I don't think that's going to make it so Akola falls out of that top 5 or even top 3 status that he currently holds. I think he's going to hold that till the end of Smash Ultimate. So even though more different types of people are beating him, I don't think that's really going to hinder his success. He's still going to be able to win at a majority of events that he shows up to. In 2nd place, you are going to have Mia. And I think the thing that stopped Mia from being the best player in the world this season is the thing that stops him every single season, and that's just going to be his inconsistencies. Because Mia either wins the event or kind of bombs out at the event. He's got a 1st place at Kowloon 12 with Kaguribi, beating Snow. Moss at level 1, double eliminates Akola, only dropping 1 set to him. But then he's got a 13th at Supernova, losing to Mars and Sonic. Still picks up wins on Shutone and Beast of Paul. He's got a 1st place at Japan 24, double eliminates Reru, beats Osimo, Meister, Carmelo, Yonpi, only drops 1 set to Reru. But then he's got a 13th place at Riptide, losing to Syrup and Light, getting a win on Jazo. 1st place at Umabora SP11, beating Snow, Akola, Hurt, Doramigi, Akko, only dropping 1 set to Akola. 5th place at Invitational, beating Luis, Doramigi, Kananabe, Spargo, Hurt, only losing to Tweak and Alima. That's kind of his only like okay result of the season. After that, he's got a 1st place at Cirque 4, beating Light, Lima, T, and Tweak, and Beast Mode Paul, only dropping 1 set to Lima. 1st place at Delta 9, beating Reru, Tamapi, Matsunabe, and Yamanachi. He's got a 9th place at the Luminosity, makes moves Miami, losing to Wrath and Light, but picking up wins on Zomba and Raffle. He's got a 2nd place at Don't Park on the Grass, losing to Spargo twice, but getting a win on Spargo, as well as Luis and Reru. And finally, he's got a win at LACS Rivals, double eliminating Glutzing, as well as Tweak and Shattuck, and only dropping 1 set to Pluto. So as you can see, Mia has an amazing season. Picks up a win on pretty much every single top 20 player that he has played against, and he has a positive record against, I think, every single player in the world except for Spargo. At least people that he has played multiple times, he's going positive or even against them. He has just been so successful this year, but it's those inconsistencies that are ultimately going to be keeping Mia out of that #1 spot. Because when the other guy in the world has 1 9th place and then pretty much only wins, a couple 13th places are really gonna hurt. Even if those losses are only to players that are in the top 40, top 30. Again, if the other guy's only losing to people that are in the top 10, it makes a difference. And your best player in the world for 2024 for the first time ever is going to be Spargo. That's right, he has finally earned the crown, and earn it he did. He had such a phenomenal season. He starts off with a 3rd place at Kowloon 12 with Kaguribi. Ends up losing to Doramigi, but beats Shirome, Alice, Masa, Osimo, Doramigi, and level 1 before falling to Akola. Then he wins Supernova, beating Pelka, Loaf, Syrup, Ken, Mars, Hurt, Shattuck, Sonics. No sets dropped. He wins Riptide, beating Shutone twice, as well as Syrup, Osimo, and Mutace. He's got a 2nd place at the Luminosity Invitational, losing to MK Leo, Zomba, and Cola, but picking up wins on Zap, Sonics, Meister, Light, Osimo, Zomba, Shutone, and Cola as well. He's got a 9th place at the Invitational, losing to Cola, or getting wins rather on Cola, Snow, and Epic Gabriel, only losing to T and Mia. 4th place at Cirque, losing to T and Lima, picking up wins on Doramigi, Tweak, and Shattuck. He's got a 1st place at the Throne 2, losing to Leo and Zachary, picking up wins on Dryby, Mars, Remu, Tweak, Candle, Hurt, Leo, 2 wins on Light. 1st place at Don't Bark on the Grass with 2 wins on Mia, as well as dropping a set to him, but also getting wins on Shutone, Ken, and MVD. And then finally, 4th place at LSCS Rivals, losing to Gluttony and Light, but picking up wins on Mars and Shadow. So the gap between Mia and Spargo is clearly extremely close. They both have 2 P-tier wins. They both have 2 A-tier wins. You do have Mia with an extra S-tier win over Spargo, but he also has 13th place at 2 P-tier events where Spargo ends up winning. And the 2 P-tier events that Mia wins, you have Spargo not in attendance, so I'm not really going to punish him for that. And he gets 3rd place at the other one, so still performs White. Well, they both have similar bad losses, me as being Wrath and Mars, which I do think are going to be like ranked a little bit lower than T and Zachary, as well as Zomba for Spargo. They have respective head-to-heads against the top 20 players in the world. To say that they're just kind of beating all of the top 20 players in the world. You do have Spargo with a winning head-to-head against Mia, but personally that doesn't really mean a lot to me. And the logic that I use is I think that Mia is a little bit better at winning. He has had more success in tournaments, but he also has been to more tournaments. But I think that Spargo is much more consistent, and overall, taking everything into account, because of that, I do think that Spargo is the best player in the world. But the gap is extremely close. And with that, I thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. The sport has been absolutely unreal. As I'm curious what y'all top 20 look like. Top 20 lists are always controversial, but just remember, be civil. It really doesn't matter. And yeah, that's all I got to say. I'll see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.